Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central. Live from Studio A and the Sugar Shack World Headquarters, it's the In Wheel Time car talk show.
The hot Sugar Shack.
It is. Coming up, we're going to talk to the VP of Legal for a company called InformedIQ, and bias in lenders for auto loans. Hello? Yeah, let's do that. Jeff has a segment on personalized license plates I think that you're going to get a kick out of. Conrad has the racing calendar and the car clinic. We'll also have the stories making automotive news headlines this week. We're going to get you spit roasted right here in hot Texas.
All right.
On the In Wheel Time Car Talk Show. Howdy, along with Mike out of this world, Mars, King Conrad DeLong. We always need more Jeff Zekin. I'm Don Armstrong. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. And we'd like to thank also for filling in for the CEO, Tom. Tom is, don't let me screw this up now. Is it Oshavits?
Bullseye, first time, you got it right.
Well, it was only by luck.
That is the first time he's got it right.
And I can see that you've already got a sense of humor, so pardon us if this is not a legal course in dissertation here.
Not at all. Not at all. No, it's all bias as such. Love to talk about it.
So you're one of those guys in this company called InformedIQ that's kind of like in the background skunk works, shall we call it, back there trying to keep everybody on task. No, you can't say that. You can't say this. We're going to go this way. You can't do it that way. That kind of guy.
Right, no, we're absolutely making the world work one day at a time.
That's it. I love it. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your Saturday to join us this day. So bias in consumer lending occurs when a lender makes a decision related to a loan and denies credit or imposes non-standard terms for reasons other than the borrower's credit worthiness. Oh, my gosh. Try to untangle that web for us, would you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the first thing I would do is go a little broader and say, what is bias, right? Let's get everybody on the same page on that. So bias is basically when you make a systematic error and all the values are wrong by a certain amount. So imagine you're measuring somebody's height, and every time you measure their height, they're wearing boots. Bias is that it looks right, but every time the soles of the shoes are off, right? So, I mean, you're always off by the height of the shoes. And, there's a professor named Brian Marks from Morehouse College who talked about who has bias. And it said, basically, if you have a brain and you live in society, you have bias, right? So bias is something we all have. And so when we think about loans, bias comes in every part of the process. It comes when somebody makes a loan, it comes from the dealers, and it comes from consumers.
Okay. Let's just say, for instance, that I want to buy a new car, and that new car is $50,000.
Right.
And my credit is kind of teetering on the edge of being able to buy that $50,000 car, but I know I can buy a $30,000 car. Where does the bias come in on that when it comes to lending money from a bank, a financial institution? Where does the bias come in?
I think bias comes in two places. One, it comes in from the data, and two, it comes from people's discretion. So right now, about 80% of the loans in auto are through dealers. And when you go to a dealer, the lender gives the dealer something called a buy rate, which is the price that they would be willing to offer to give the loan. And then there's something called a dealer markup. And that's the amount the dealer can raise the price and still get the loan approved. And the bias comes into that little discretion area between the buy rate and the markup. And the second place that bias can come in is in the loan itself, right? So when you may give a credit score or give somebody a credit, evaluate their loan, there's bias in the data.
Is it inherent to have bias in the data?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's absolutely. When I think about lending, we think about three generations of lending. In the 1960s or 70s, it was discretionary. You guys all probably remember It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
And you would just look at somebody and say, hey, you look like a good loan person. Somebody get a loan, I'll give you the loan. And then in 1989, FICO invented the FICO score. And basically the idea there was people are biased, so let's have computers do it. But the problem with that was that it's like assuming that data is actually neutral, and data isn't neutral. And so now, one of the issues with credit scores is that they're only as good as the data that's in them.
And then doesn't the federal government get quite involved in trying to manage this bias so that there isn't any gender, race bias that's going on as well?
You are absolutely right. I mean, there's laws like Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Regulators like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau look at this stuff. And in fact, just in the last couple of years, there's been efforts to, punish folks who haven't done right by consumers. There was a case in New York with an auto dealership where they literally told their employees that give certain people, try to sell certain products to Hispanics and blacks because we think they're less educated. And they had to pay a $1.5 million fine. There was another case in Illinois where products, especially ancillary products like nitrogen tires and tinted windows and gap waivers were sold to some people and not others. And I guess the last point I would make is back in the early teens, the CFPB did a study and it found out that, generally speaking, Black and Hispanic borrowers were charged a couple $100 more than average for dealer markups.
So I want to go back just a minute. You talk about dealer markup. So we've got a financial institution that gives the dealer the power, basically, to loan that money to a consumer. Where does the markup come to the dealer? On the loan, or does it come on? Is it included in the price of the car? How does that all play out?
So that's a really great question. So imagine that you have a loan, and the loan says the lender says, "Hey, I'll give you this. I'll approve this loan at 7.5%, but I'm willing to go to 9% and still approve the loan." And so the dealer, depending on what the consumer buys or what the other rates are looking at, may charge it more. And the money, that increment above the 7.5%, will be shared between the dealer and the lender.
So the dealer looks at it and says, "Okay, I got the money for. Make sure I understand this. I got the money for 7.5. Now I'm going to turn around and charge this guy 9, and if he takes it, then I'm going to split the profit per se with the lending company
of the
with
point
the bank
and a half of the point and a half.
Yeah, right.
I think you got that right, and I think part of the reason why you want discretion for the dealers because they're working with different aspects of the consumer to get whatever else they're buying on the car or whatever the amount is. So
right,
so they can make money on what in the business is called the rate bump
or back end,
but they can also make money on the MSRP because some banks will say, "Hey, I'm going to loan you 7.5%." up to 120% of MSRP. So they can make money in multiple places, which is why a well-informed customer is the one who's going to save the most money when they go in to buy a deal.
So let me ask you this, Tom. What happens when the car manufacturer says 0% interest on this Chevy Blazer? If you'll buy it today and we'll run it out to whatever it is, 4 years or 5 years or whatever.
And there is no interest in the Chevy Blazer.
Oh, hey, that's funny. Ha, ha, ha. But so that therefore you cut out the dealer's chance to make some money off of the loan. And the only way that the dealer is going to really bump it up is through the actual sale price of the car.
And the ancillary products.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I guess if I was going to give consumers tips about how to buy a car, if that's really the underlying question, there's a couple things you can do. One is, do research about the car you're buying ahead of time so you know roughly what the retail price is. 2, you can consider getting a loan from your local bank or your local credit union and getting that pre-approved. 3, you can think about what optional add-ons you're interested in and then make sure that you're comfortable saying no if you don't want the additional ones. And I guess another point would be to make sure you look at that contract and make sure that nothing was stuffed into your contract that you didn't want. So there are things that consumers can do. And the other point I would simply make is that bias is just not on lending, but it's on consumers too, right? So, there's something called projection bias, which is that people tend to think about the future the way it is the present. So if it's a warm, sunny day, you're probably more likely to buy a convertible. Or if it's a cold day, you're more likely to buy a black car. Or if it's snow, you're more likely to buy snow tires. So people need to think about what their own biases are. Another type of bias is what I would call anchoring bias. So you walk into a dealer, and the first car they show you is the most expensive car, right? So you're saying, oh my God, that's the price. And then they show you the cheaper cars later. Because you saw the more expensive car first, that's your anchor, right? It's like looking at a T-shirt and saying, hey, I'm going to charge you $75 for the T-shirt. Then you show a $30 T-shirt, and that looks cheap. So the consumers also have to think about the own biases they bring into the showroom.
There's an emotional aspect of that. Okay, what does AI informed IQ do?
Sure. So typically right now, or back in the day, when a dealer would mark up a loan or sell the loan to a lender or show it to them, they would send a 50-page PDF to the lender, and the lender would have to review it.
Oh,
We've
God.
automated that process.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's interesting from a bias perspective is we can actually automatically check for things that could go wrong. So, for example, in Texas, there's a doc fee of $150 requirement in the state. And if that doc fee for some reason is above $150, we can use our technology to check it and say, hey, consumer, hey, lender, this is wrong. Let's get rid of it. Similarly, if you look at like gap waivers, there's a limit in Texas, I'm using Texas today, that you can't charge more than 5% of the amount financed for a gap waiver. We can check that. So one of the advantages of automation is that you can remove some of the discretion that causes bias.
So do you sell your service to, who do you sell your service to?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we are the, as you said, the back office insight window for lenders, indirect lenders, to take these auto loans that are provided by the dealers and evaluating them. So many of the nation's largest lenders use us to automate and process these loans, which is a win-win for everybody, right? Because instead of taking 2 weeks to fund a loan, we can evaluate a loan in, 15 minutes.
So you guys do the research for the consumer on, and I come from a little bit of a retail side. You monitor the technique in the car business called Foursquare. So in Foursquare, there's 4 things that the dealer wants you to focus on. He wants you to focus on one of 4 things: price, down payment, interest rate, or term. So all of those things, or trade, excuse me. So, and if they can get you to focus on one of those, they can kind of goof around on the other 3 and make more money on you if you're not paying attention.
They're going to land you
Your
on it.
program is trying to monitor all aspects of that for the consumer and for the lender, saying, hey, they've got you focused on your down payment, but, you need to pay attention to what's going on over here in term and doc fees and all that other stuff where they nickel and dime you.
Great comment. I would just say yes, but. So what we do is we literally digitize and automate all the information on the loan. And once it's digitized, we can then ask questions like, does this loan have X? Does this loan have Y? So, the lender can make sure that A, they can fund the loan, and B, that it's compliant with the law.
But you basically work with lenders, not necessarily directly with consumers.
That's correct. You're right. You got it.
Okay. So it's not a retail company.
But what he's doing is he's giving us the information of what he does for instance, like if a dealer is self-funding new car loans, for instance, or his bank, the dealer's bank, is loaning them all this money, and he's basically the broker in the loan.
He's a quality control.
He's the guy.
Right.
He finds the odd man out features of the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And another way to say it, guys, is that when it's like a market. The banks are bidding for the loan from the dealer, and they win the bid. But once they win the bid, they still have to verify that what they bid on is what they wanted.
Right.
So they have to fund the loan, and that's where we come in to make sure that the loan is what it's supposed to be, and the loan works, that there's the right signatures, that the income from the consumer is right. So we're really just helping the back office to help them vet the loan.
Well, I want you to represent me as the consumer. How do I know that the the financial institution is using you?
Well, that's a great question. I think what our job is, I think the more that we can make lending, here's how I would respond to that by saying, the more we can automate this, the more we can remove discretion that can hurt consumers. And we can put checks into our processes, which many of our clients ask for, to make sure that consumers are protected.
So in other words, somebody like Chase, let's just a name that comes to mind, that Chase says, okay, Informed IQ, I want you to make sure that the money that I'm loaning Don Armstrong is on the up and up when it comes to buying this new car. And that is where Tom comes in, and he says, okay, we're going to look at this. We're going to look at that data.
And look at the contract.
And looked at the contract, and he's going to tell Chase, no, this is not right. This doesn't add up, and red flag. Am I correct, Tom?
I mean, not only can you say my name correctly, you got that absolutely right.
That's 2 in one day.
Dang.
We're going to celebrate.
Yeah. We'll
Okay.
post that
Well, I
somewhere.
mean, I got to bring it down to my level on this stuff, because that's your business, and I don't know your business at all. I had no clue about this bias in loans. None. Who was to know? Because I just assumed that here I am, I make this kind of money, I got this kind of savings, and this is my credit rating. That's all I know. And
Yeah,
I think
no, that's great. And I can give you an example. You guys might find this interesting. Let me talk to you about a little bit about bias and data. And I'm going to talk about cars here. So back in 2012, this is about bias and data. There was a program in the city of Boston called Street Bump. Have you guys ever heard of that?
never.
Okay, so Street Bump was this program by the city of Boston to find potholes around the city. And generally the way you find potholes is you have some guy in a truck and he's looking around, sees a pothole and covers it. So they said, hey, let's take advantage of consumers. And they said, let's use consumer phones. We know that phones have sensors that can bump up and down. So they built an app, and all these people logged onto the app, and they drove around the city of Boston. And then they reported every time they hit a bump back to the city. All sounds great. But what happened was that the people who download the app tended to be yuppies and young professionals, so they only found the potholes on the streets that the yuppies drove. So that's an example of the bias in the data, right? Because only certain people downloaded the app.
Right.
So that's the thing you have to be careful of.
Yeah. Yuppies.
Oh, my God.
Where you're getting it from.
So all
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were doing were fixing potholes around Harvard.
That's it. Well,
You got it, guys.
well, Tom, I mean, how in the world did you get yourself into this job?
That's a dilemma.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been working in the field of data for 20 years, and, totally appreciate how, the ordinary person buying the car, that it just really got to make sure that you're aware of the biases. I worked at the CFPB for a period of time too, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and looked at AI when I was working there. So I've been playing around with bias for quite a while.
So is this your company, Tom?
I'm the VP and of the company, right? And I handle all the policy, I handle all the legal stuff. So it's certainly not my company, but I'm happy to be there.
Well, I'll say, I mean, you're a very smart guy, and we thank you very much for being able to kind of drill it down to our ignorant level when it comes to this stuff, because, I mean, not in a funny way, but truly, I mean, I don't know anything
don't
about
think about
No,
this.
you never think about it. And we could really get screwed very easily and not even know it.
And that's the hope of some of the car dealers,
Well, I
is
don't,
to
yeah.
turn you upside down and shake all the money out of your
Well,
pocket.
and so he's there to help me not get
Well,
shook.
he's there to protect the banks from that happening to the bank.
And,
Right, and also I just wanted to stress, and I said a little bit before, that I do think that consumers going to the store need to think a little bit about themselves too. I mean, one other type of bias I didn't talk about is confirmation bias, which is, the type of bias you have when you pay attention to what you already believe. So, for example, say you love Ford trucks, right? And so every time you hear a good stat about a Ford truck, you agree with it, but you disregard everything about a different type of truck. So people just need to think a little bit about their own biases, right? It's not only the lenders and the dealers, but you, a consumer, have a role too.
So what the manufacturer calls brand loyalty is actually a bias towards that brand.
Right. You're going to think great about that because you're loyal to that brand. Every time you hear a good fact, you're going to hear it.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today, Tom. We really appreciate you spending the time with us. Best of luck in your career. I don't think you need any luck. I think you're doing just fine up there. And listen, when I've got a question about that car loan that I'm about to get, I'm going to call you, okay?
Can't wait for it.
I'll bet. Hey, have yourself a great summer, Tom.
Happy Father's
You
Day.
too.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Tom Oshavits.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
Vice President of
Interesting.
Legal for Informed IQ.
Nice.
I know. It's way beyond me, but I kind of get it, Okay. Let's see. It's that time to tell you about Jeff's little thing, and I want to tell you also
I
about
don't want to know about Jeff.
little thing. Well, I mean, no, it's personalized license plate, vanity plates.
Oh,
if
yeah,
you will.
that thing.
We're going to get to that, but first of all, let's do the race card. And I want to remind everybody that the In Real Time race card is sponsored by Texas Nostalgia Modified Production.
Even if they didn't show up for their interview today.
Yeah.
So NASCAR is at Nashville on June 25th. They're in Chicago on July 2nd. That should be a fun race to watch. Chicago street course. I don't know why, but they are.
All I can think of is, are you going to get a ticket? You're going to get a ticket, or somebody's going to get knocked in the head or shot.
Oh, I will bet you there will be some crime going on during that.
Some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canadian Grand Prix Formula One is this weekend. They're in Zandvoort next weekend, and the Austrian Grand Prix the first weekend of July. Watkins Glen IMSA race is next weekend, and our friend Alec Udell will be racing in that. IndyCar is at Road America this weekend. They're at Mid-Ohio July 2nd. And then 24 Hours of Le Mans happened last weekend.
I watched it.
Cadillac finished third and fourth.
Third, fourth, and 13th.
In the hypercars. Corvette won its class.
Yep.
And that Hendrick Motorsports car, the Camaro, it won its class, which was the invitational class. And nobody really gave it credit for even finishing the race.
Yeah,
and
Hendrick.
it did. And then NHRA is in Norwalk next weekend. They're in Bandimere on July 14th.
Hot.
Seattle on the 21st and Sonoma on the 28th. The weird thing is finally Erica won last weekend her Pro Stock, and on the Western Swing, the only place Pro Stock is going is Bandimere. They're not going to Seattle, and they're not going to Sonoma. What a shame.
Well,
and then
I think that's part of the reason that the NHRA is kind of
collapsing.
Yeah, because I don't. Whatever.
And then next weekend is Pikes Peak International Hill Climb. Richard Tomlin will have his car there, as well as running a couple of other cars. Should be a lot of fun. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him on the air to talk or not, but I'll leave that up to Mr. Mars.
Yes, the booking agent.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Jeff has got a thing that I saw the pictures of the license plates, and I'm going, yep, I know Jeff's going to do well with this one.
Oh,
Personalized plates are what we call here in the upper end vanity plates.
Vanity plates. Clever or risque? That's the question. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell you the vanity license plates are a popular way to make the car stand out in a crowd. However, like all creative endeavors, personalized license plates can be a great opportunity for the funny people of the world to crack a dirty joke. The best part of this is, while you're reading it or trying to interpret it, react to your funny plates as you drive around town. Now, the first license plate was issued in 1893 in France, and then a few years later, the Paris Ordinance Act of 1901 came about, and that's how they became
What does it
license
say
plates.
on the back of that truck? Philanderer?
No.
Oh, plumber.
All right,
Sorry.
but the license plate is 0 turds on this one.
It was what?
0 turds.
On the back of the plumber truck.
Each state, when it came to the United States, each state had their problem with giving it to the government, so that's why we have different plates in different states. The first license plate in America was in New York. So this is a plumber with 0 turds. I think I'll allow this one. This one's not too bad, not too risque. He's got his phone
and
number on
there's somebody at the state tag agency that reviews these to make sure. I'm getting ahead of you. Sorry.
Yep. This one here is it's not a big secret. This person had the nicest mom or a narcissist mom, whichever one it is. So I'm going with the nicest mom. So there you go. That's a good one there.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's not risque.
Or incest mom.
Incest mom. That's
this
right.
one here, the state of Washington has a W, and the guy obviously he likes hot dogs.
Where was Anthony when we needed him?
Anthony Weiner.
Could be Anthony's
Weiner.
car.
Well, there's a lot of deep hidden meaning in this because you got an Audi, and then you got a University Audi plate, and then you got the Washington state. So there's a lot of uppityness.
So it's got for those that are listening and not watching, it's got the stylized Washington letter on there
from the
Washington,
University of Washington.
And then and behind it, got EINER.
Mm-hmm.
So you put the two together, and it's Wiener.
But he's a big fan of hot dogs. That's my
I'm
impression.
sure that's what it is.
Yep. Now, this next one here is
Knockwurst because it's a German car.
This one is a bit personal. It's a vanity plate. Put your
can't read
50
that.
Shades of Grey down, and it says "I love BDSM" on the plate. And it's a Mini Cooper, so it's got to be a small BDSM. I'm thinking.
So is it a heart?
I
heart
love. Yeah, I heart.
I
heart
BDSM.
and it's a small car, so you can't escape that one.
In California.
So to speak.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and then you've got this guy is in tune with the young people voting because you can register to vote when you're 18. So, are you 18 yet?
And then
So he's into voting and making sure that all the good citizens are registered to vote.
That's what that
You
is.
bet.
Liar.
Yeah.
On a Saab.
On a Saab. This one, at least one person is honest. If you're going to get a fire engine red Corvette and celebrate your midlife crisis, this is the least you can do. The plate says Viagra. There you go. Like it. And then, of course, the
I
last one.
take offense at that.
Well, okay. The last one is you all make the interpretation of this one.
What does that say, Conrad?
Likelihood this guy's last name was probably Cox.
No, it's the media company.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Cox
Cox
Media. Mhm.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the
I knew
big
that.
media company.
And what does it say?
Big Cox. So I wonder what his wife's license plate looks like.
And that's Michigan.
That's Michigan. And somebody allowed that to go on.
Yep.
What's COX?
Yep.
Okay.
There you go. It's just vanity plates, just something to look at. It's all good. I do it. Kathy and I do it. We look. Oh, look at the plate. What does that mean? She has to explain it to me. So.
Well, you do. You have to figure out what they mean.
Yeah. Well, and
I
some
did
of them you don't.
When I was a field engineer with General Motors, I did an inspection on a Corvette that had popped the motor, and go down there and look at it. And there's all of this black rubber on the rear quarter panels.
Oh,
that
sure.
You could tell the guy had been racing and stuff. And the license plate was ULUZ. You lose.
You lose.
And actually kind of searched the license plate on YouTube and found a video of him blowing the motor, racing the car.
And that was the end of that warranty.
That was the end of that warranty.
Yeah.
You betcha.
Yeah. No racing allowed. All right. Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right.
The In-Wheel Time Car Talk Show is available 24/7 through the iHeartRadio app. Just look for In-Wheel Time Car Talk. We also video stream on Facebook, YouTube, and InWheelTime.com. And by the way, YouTube is now doing our podcasts as well. And podcasts are also available on over a dozen of the most popular other podcasts out there as well. The In-Wheel Time Car Talk Show continues right after this quick break. Everyone at the Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise In at the Loopy Tortilla Tex-Mex in Katy, thank you for participating in the best cruise in around and look forward to seeing you again. You'll hear about the next cruise in date right here on In Wheel Time. Next time you're in the West Houston Energy Corridor area, be sure and stop in at the original Loopy Tortilla Tex-Mex at I-10 and Highway 6 or the Katy location on the Grand Parkway at Kingsland Boulevard. When passing through Beaumont or College Station, stop in and have Loopy's award-winning beef fajitas and frozen margaritas. There's always a celebration at Loopy Tortilla. Loopy Tortilla founder Stan Holt and his wife Sheila are winning racers on the NHRA drag racing circuit and have a collection of hot rods and classics that everyone appreciates. Look for them at the next Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise In. The date will be announced soon and will once again be held at the Loopy Tortilla Tex-Mex on 99 and Kingsland Boulevard, just south of I-10 and Katy. We'll give you all the details right here on the In Real Time Car Talk Show and online. Donations benefit God's Garage. We'll see you then. You own a car you love. Well, why not let Gulf Coast Auto Shield protect it? Houstonian John Gray invites you to his state-of-the-art facility to introduce you to his specialist team of auto enthusiasts. We promise you'll be impressed. Whether you're looking to massage your original paint to a like-new appearance, apply a ceramic coating, install a paint protection film, nano-ceramic window tint, or new windshield protection called ExoShield, Gulf Coast Auto Shield is where Houston's car people go. Curbed your wheels? Instead of buying new, why not have them repaired? How about a professionally installed radar detector? Gulf Coast Auto Shield does that too. Get a peek inside the shop and look at the services offered by getting online and heading to gcautoshield.com. Better yet, stop by their facility at 11275 South Sam Houston Tollway, just south of the Southwest Freeway, and get a personal tour. Gulf Coast Auto Shield is your place to go for all things exterior. Call them today, 832-930-5655 or gcautoshield.com. The award-winning In-Wheel Time Car Talk Show is available on the most popular podcast channels out there in 30-minute episodes. We realize our 3-hour live show can be difficult to catch in its entirety, so now you can listen every day to a convenient, fresh 30-minute episode. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible, along with a dozen more. In Wheel Time has the most informative automotive guest interviews and new car reviews, along with popular features including Conrad's Car Clinic and This Week in Auto History, along with automotive news headlines. Our live broadcast airs every Saturday, 8 to 11 Central on InWheelTime.com, the iHeart app, and on YouTube. Be sure to say hello when we're broadcasting from the Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise Inn, Autorama, and the Houston Auto Show, among others. Now, it's easier than ever to hear about all things automotive all week long. You're invited to join fellow car enthusiasts in becoming part of the ever-growing In Wheel Time Car Talk family. Don't forget those 30-minute podcast episodes on your favorite podcast channel. That's it for this podcast episode of the In Wheel Time Car Show. I'm Don Armstrong, inviting you to join us for our live show every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our InWheelTime.com website. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Podcast, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Keep listening, and we'll see you soon.